Best.Podcast.Ever is sponsored by the Gertzberg Law Firm, a full-service business law firm in Cleveland and Chagrin Falls that's changing the way businesses retain their attorneys. Go to gertzberglaw.com to learn more. While you're there, check out Cover My Six, a complete legal audit of the 6 areas that most often create or prevent business lawsuits and government investigations. Go to covermysix.com to learn how we keep you safe. Enjoy the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're about to listen to the best podcast ever recorded.
We need good people in government. It doesn't have to be this way, and we don't need as many cynics out in the public viewing politicians as negatively as they are. It doesn't have to be that way. I'm not in this. I'm not in this for the money. I'm not in it for the accolades. I'm not in it to keep my family name alive. I'm in it for the right reasons, and that's what politics can be. So.
Hey folks, Alex Gertzberg here. Thanks for tuning in to another exciting episode of Best Podcast Ever. I appreciate it. Today's episode, Tom Jackson running for a state Senate seat here in tropical Ohio, United States of America, District 24 Senate seat. He's running against a guy named Matt Dolan, the incumbent. I interviewed Tom for a good hour and a half. It was a really good interview. I think you'll enjoy it. I didn't pull punches. I know Tom. I've worked with Tom. We've known each other for a few years, but I didn't sugarcoat some of the feelings or questions that I had about today's political climate, or why he is better at running things than Matt Dolan is. And he answered them as best he could, and I thought he did a pretty good job. So we talked about a pretty wide-ranging series of topics, why he's running in marathons, not just in political races. We talked about Tom's background, not from Cleveland. He's from New York. He's been in Cleveland for a really long time. Talked about the insurance business, about whether one can be both pro-business and pro-family at the same time, which I think is an important distinction that I think needs to be talked about because of how political candidates tend to paint you as either pro or anti-business, and I think that you can be both. And so we talk about that. We talk about racism, social media, House Bill 6, which, for those of you who aren't from Ohio, can learn a lot about if you want a lesson in corruption and bribery. It's a pretty shameful chapter in Ohio political history. We talk a fair amount about that. So enjoy this interview. I really liked it. I'm not going to say too much more. I'm really, I've put myself on TV media timeout because it was making me crazy. I don't think that either party is convincing anybody anymore. I think that our system is about as broken as it can be. And I think that we as voters are really buying into narratives that are being created by people whose job it is to get you to buy into narratives, frankly, right? Whether it's through social media or through memes or through just sound bites, right? They're all narratives. You're either pro police or you're pro Black Lives Matter, right? The fact that we even have to explain that you can be pro police and against discrimination is a really great example of how narratives are created for us. I mean, isn't everybody for the good cops and against the bad cops, right? Aren't we? I mean, isn't everyone generally against police brutality? I don't know. I mean, I guess what the narrative is trying to get us to commit to is the idea that we should defer to police, that we should defer to someone who puts their life on the line and who has to make discretionary calls. I don't think you have to defer to anybody. I really don't. I think that you listen to both sides and then you use your judgment and you look at what the video shows and you make yourself an informed person so that you can make informed decisions. The fact that people have to explain that you can be pro good police conduct and against bad police conduct is like bonkers to me, you know. I think we just have to be smarter than that, and we're not being smarter than that. Anytime we have to explain that, we're showing that we're not, as a society, all that smart. Said I was going to go into it, and I went into it. Some housekeeping. So GertzbergLaw.com. If you go there, there's a link there for blog. If you click on that link, there is a way to subscribe to this new weekly email that I send out, that I write and I send it out myself, and it is it's called the Alex's Insider's Fix. And what I do is I provide 3 tips to business people. And anybody can, you don't have to be a business person, but it's an entrepreneurial tip, a legal tip, and then just a random tip, right, that I think will help folks. And we've gotten some really good feedback about it, and I think you'll like it. So check that out. Go to GertzbergLaw.com, click on blog, and then subscribe to the weekly newsletter there, or the weekly email. I think you'll like it. With no further ado, enjoy this interview with Tom Jackson. I think you'll enjoy it. Thanks. How are you? You having a good day?
I'm doing great, Alex. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be a guest on the Best Podcast Ever.
It's a much better podcast today, Tom, because you're on. I appreciate you doing this, man. Squeezing me into your busy political and professional schedule. Yeah, you feeling good? You healthy? Everyone in the family healthy?
Yeah, we're very fortunate so far. Only one of us had to get a test because of some exposure, but that came back negative.
Good.
So everybody is healthy. They are employed. They are taking care of themselves. And that's probably, least of my worries right now. So how about you and your family?
We're doing well, Tom. Thanks for asking. Everyone's good. Everyone here, too, is healthy. It's weird because I think that members of my family have had coronavirus, and I think I've been in contact with them, and I think I'm divorced, and I think my kids have gone back and forth between multiple households carrying this thing, but nobody's caught it other than that one person. It's a strange thing. All
right.
Yeah. Are your kids are in high school, I think, right?
My kids have finished high school. They have finished college. And
wow. I'm way off.
They have launched their careers here in the great state of Ohio.
Got it. Well, that makes my next question about going back to school moot. Right on. All right. Well, Tom, listen. Your time is valuable.
You just look a lot older than me. That's all.
I'm willing to bet that I both look older than you and feel older than you. I know very well, having had numerous discussions with you on how active your lifestyle is, Tom, and I only aspire to be as active as you. So I'm guessing
that you feel younger than I do, in addition to looking younger than I do.
Well, I know what it's like to have a baby in the house, so I'm sure
Yeah.
I feel better than you.
Yeah. Yesterday, I went all day without having slept the night before at all because of that child. And I feel much better today. Let's not talk about me, Tom. Let's talk about you.
Let me tell you a
I wanna
quick
get-
story. Let me tell you a quick story about being up
Go.
all night with my son.
Go.
So my son's 22 years old now, and it was just this weekend that I was up all night with him. Now, a lot of people will think that we were up partying or drinking all night, and that's not really the case. So my son attempted and completed a 100-mile race on Saturday. And in order to cover 100 miles on your feet, it takes a while. So he had crossed the finish line a little after 4 a.m. on Sunday morning, and I had crewed for him all day. So we did pop a beer at about 4:30 in the morning, but I was up all night, all day and all night with him on Saturday, but for much different reasons than I think you were up with yours.
I was going to get to the running. I have lots of I take every opportunity when I talk to you to ask running related questions because you are an avid performance runner. But let's get into that now since you brought it up. That's insane. 100-mile run is bananas. What possesses a human being, Tom Jackson, to strap on his or her running shoes and say, 5 miles, 20, 50 miles, that's just not going to cut it for me. I think I want to run 100 miles. I think I want to run from like here to Columbus, distance-wise. What goes through a man's head when they make a decision like that?
So my personal experience, I can only talk about running for 12 hours, getting to 50 miles. So that's the limit of my ability to date. But I think a lot of it is simply to try and understand what we're capable of and to experiment a little bit. So many times, especially in athletics, we trust and we work on our body to perform for us, and we get disappointed when it fails. Those type of endurance sports really comes down to mind and body. So your body will do what your mind wants it to do. So I think it is challenging yourself to do those things that you don't think you are capable of doing and then actually doing them. So, something like that over 24 hours comes down to a lot of logistics and nutrition so that you don't fall apart.
Is it
a lot?
Sorry, no, go ahead.
From a young age, he always had a lot of motivation. He's what he may lack in raw talent, he makes up for in discipline. So it's not surprising to somebody who's watched him grow up and mature that he would apply himself in this way. He was never the fastest kid on the team, but he was the kid that the coach put in at the end of the game because his motor kept going. So he's got that drive and he's got that motivation. And he came into the sport, through cross country in high school, and I think he was just looking for other outlets and other ways to express that desire to run. And he found that in some of these performance athletes who turned out to be, good role models and examples for him.
Do you think that people who run that far, that long, that's got to be like rough on the joints, don't you think? I mean, clearly, while you're doing it, you have to be in superior physical shape and have mental stamina that is, and focus and discipline that far surpasses most human beings on the planet. But your body takes a real beating from that, doesn't it?
Yeah, it hurts.
Short and sweet, Tom. That's what I like about you.
I don't want to get into my take on running being this natural form and how your body is made to run, because it really doesn't hurt the joints as much as it hurts the muscles. So the muscles support the joints, and if you run properly, you're going to put the strain on your muscles, not your joints.
All right. I remember you and I had a conversation a few years ago, and I was really so I've ran 2 half marathons, and we here at the Gertzberg household have set a goal of running a full marathon in the next year if they have them. You and I have talked about it, and one of the things that really surprised me about you is that you told me that when you run just generally much less long distances, you run without music, you run without headphones, you just run in silence, right? And that blows me away. I've always understood the Zen-like meditative quality and discipline that comes with running, and I appreciate that. But why run in silence as opposed to music like most of the rest of the world?
I think I would challenge your assumption that most of the rest of the world is using music. Maybe you're just
interesting. All right.
Maybe you're just running. I think some of the stuff I've seen in Runner's World magazine and stuff is about 50-50.
Really?
So, I mean, for me, that's kind of my time. And if I run with other people, it's my guy time. It's running with friends. So, I maybe it's just a habit. I am a person that runs on habits. So I've just always done it that way. And when I started running, we didn't have all that. I'm dating myself. If I had to wear music when I first started running, I would have had to run with a cassette tape on my hip. I was there when the first iPods were made. So just for me, it was just never a comfortable thing. I would feel less safe in my environment if I was blocking it out like that. I go out there to be a part of things.
Well, here. So I meditate or try to meditate pretty consistently. I get a lot of value from meditation, and so I'm really curious about the similarities, because a lot of performance athletes compare silent training to getting into that flow state, that meditative state. When I meditate, I put a lot of attention. I fluctuate between putting all my attention on my breath and on the sensation of my body against, the wind or the chair or the floor or whatever. And so I fluctuate between that and then just following what my mind is doing unconsciously, right? And just kind of watching it, secrete thoughts and ideas without my awareness, conscious awareness, and just kind of training myself to pay attention to that. When you're running, is it that kind of thing, or are you or are you actually thinking through problems and having conscious thoughts that you're like, what is your mind doing? What is your attention doing when you're running in silence?
Yeah, so if you're out for a number of hours, you're going to a lot of different places. So I think it's all of those things that you just mentioned. There are some very intentional things you try and figure out or work through when you're out there for a few hours, and other times you really are you want to just get in that flow and feel that sensation of yourself moving through that space, and how you react to the environment. And it is kind of interesting where your mind goes. To me, that's not a scary thing. I think it's worthwhile, and I think the more you do it, the more you can check on yourself if you're getting into places that are a little darker, or some of the negative self-thinking that happens. I think there's just a lot of time and a lot of space to experience a lot of things while you're out there. So there are times that I long to run with people so that I have company, and it's more of a social aspect. And then there are other times that you want to just leave it all behind and just be by yourself. So running's a great way to do that.
Tom, you just told me that you you used to run, well, you implied that you used to run, with cavemen barefoot through the savannah without headphones and Walkman. Was that around here? Where'd you grow up?
So I spent the first part of my life in New York. I was born and raised on Long Island, and classic suburbs of the 1960s. And then I went to school in upstate New York, and from there I spent time in Washington, D.C. and in Cleveland, Ohio.
All right. You don't sound like you don't have a Long Island accent at all. You must have. Did you ever? Do you think you ever had one and you outgrew it, or did you never have one?
No, I have one. It comes out. So if we were sitting around with my 30-year friends and we had a couple of beers, there's no doubt that you would know that I'm from New York. So as a young person, young professional, first out of college, moving to Washington, D.C., which is really a melting pot of the country, if not the world. I was just very open and very impressionable, and first time living really in the South, and you just moderate things. You just kind of find your way around, and I still think I have some of that New York attitude that people like to talk about. But to me, that's really just being kind of smart and assertive. So the accent comes out, the attitude comes out, but that was a long time ago.
All right, right on. You are now an official Ohioan and have been for a while, for as long as I've known you, which is a couple of years now. And I know, you are in the insurance world professionally and have been for a while. And then at some point you said, I think I want to get into politics, which to me is as insane as running 50-mile endurance races or 100-mile endurance races. So let's talk about that. I've said this to you, Tom. I commend you. I think that it is rare and commendable for someone to jump into a political climate and a political system that really, excoriating the other side is the norm, right? It's not the exception. I think it was the exception at one time, but it's not. It's character assassination. It's negative. It's and I guess I don't know if your race with Dolan has been that way. I want to dive into that, but before we do, why? What made you decide to leave your professional life and go into the political life today of all days, these times and politics being what they are? What was the thought process there?
So let's just be clear that I think we're best served by people that are not professionals when it comes to politics. I think that should be part of the public discourse. So I'm not leaving my professional life at all. Even at the state government level, when you talk about your legislators, the legislature is not in session right now. I don't know what those guys are doing. So those salaries are commensurate with kind of part-year work. So it can be full-time at times, but it really is part-year. So I would continue to work where I work, and it would be a second job to be a state senator. But the path to that decision, took a lifetime. Again, I'm not a professional politician, but I think I'm approaching it for all of the right reasons, and for some of the most noble reasons that we have in a democracy. The fact that you're serving causes that are greater than your own self-interest is a very, very noble thing. And I truly believe that that's what you should do in representative government. I'm not in there to make state government bend to the needs and whims of insurance professionals. I mean, I'm just not doing that. I don't think, money should drive the decisions of our state legislators. I think good public policy should drive the decisions of our state legislature. So not everybody is in a position or in a mindset like I am to do these things. So my first job out of college was working as an educator at a national not-for-profit whose mission was to help high school students and teachers better understand how the government works so that they could have a positive impact on the government. So that's what I did when I got out of college. So that set me up for a lifetime of interest in public policy and public service. So it's taken me a while to get back to that. You have responsibilities, you meet people, your life takes some twists and some turns. But there hasn't been a day that's gone by that I haven't read the newspaper every morning with my cup of coffee. And up until very recently, it was actually a newspaper. And it's still a newspaper, although, yeah, there are Twitter feeds and things like that, but I still read, the papers.
So why now? What was the emotion that drove you to get in the race now as opposed to any other time before now?
Yeah, kind of like a farmer's market, I think we should always kind of stay local.
Mm-hmm.
And I've paid attention to what has gone on here in Solon over the years, and I think I've had a positive influence on things that have happened at the schools as well as the city government. There were decisions made here locally that I had concerns about, and I decided to do something about. So there are people on city council that I have worked very closely with and very hard over the years to get them elected to city council because I thought that they were the best people for the city. And what that taught me was that individuals, you can lean in and make a difference. You can do things that you hadn't done before. So while I may have had that interest and I had the knowledge, the fact that I wanted to just do something, that motivation came from, sitting around and observing things long enough. Real easy to armchair, much more difficult to try and influence something. So when those candidates, when I got to know them, when those races came up, when you start peeling back, some of the issues, and then seeing those people win and make a positive influence, reinforces that cycle. The other thing was that one of the things Solon is known for are exceptional schools. And that's one, I've been living in Solon for over 20 years now, and that's what attracted us here. But every few years, these school levies come up where essentially we are being asked to raise taxes on ourselves, property owners, to support the schools. And I thought that was kind of interesting. This is the second place where I've lived, where I've owned a home. But this is the first time that I had to experience all of these levy initiatives every couple of years. And I just thought that was kind of interesting. Here we are locally raising taxes on ourselves to support the schools. And in Solon, there's never a doubt in my 20 years here that the levy's not going to pass. But every time a new levy comes up, the group that champions that levy wants it to pass by a greater number than the previous levy. So 60% is not enough. You got to pass it by 65%, or you got to pass it by 70%. So there's this whole pride thing. And I get that. And my kids, we're beneficiaries of great school systems. There's great housing stock here. We see our home values stay high. It's great. No complaints. But that curiosity on why is our state and our schools set up that way that the wealthiest can support the schools that then have the best school? It seems to me like it's great for us, but it doesn't seem real equitable across a state of over 11 million people. Like, how is that sustainable? How does that not create systemic inequality? so I can sit back. I can sit back and benefit from it. My kids certainly have, and hopefully I will when I cash out on the house. But is that it? Am I only in this world for my own self-interest, or is there some greater good? And so just through, I think, living and some maturity and some perspective, you start asking some of those questions and you start challenging some of your own personal assumptions.
Yeah.
So why did I jump in myself? I think is one of those questions, and it comes from that process of being involved and seeing the impact that you can have, and it's not just here at City Council. Back in 2018, we had an open seat for our state representative, and I figured, all right, this is a great chance now to maybe have an impact on what's going on in Columbus. And a candidate here in Solon, 37-year-old father of two small children, one was an infant, decided he was going to run, and I got to know him and felt like he had to be the best candidate that we could ever have. And we ran a race in 2018, and he won as a young person of color, small business person, father. This is your neighbor who's running for the state government, who's almost 20 years my junior, and it was one of the most rewarding experiences that I've ever been a part of. And so getting more involved, not just at the city level, but at the state level, a couple of years ago, we knew that this Senate race was on the horizon in 2020. And these are long-term plays. This Senate seat is a 4-year term. These campaigns take at least a year to run. So I was looking around to assess this race starting at the end of the 2018 cycle. So I've had a lot of time to look at it and to talk to a lot of people across the county on how this race was shaping up. And it became very clear that my experience, that my perspective, that my drive to bring positive change to my communities really positioned me as one of the best candidates out there. So then things get real serious in that second half of 2019. And just watching the way that our legislature has operated over the years just convinced me that the representation, similar to what I saw at the city council level here in Solon, really was not representative of the people, did not reflect the people, and their policies were just not aligned with the people that live in those communities. So I got fed up and I couldn't take it anymore. And so I had to assess professionally and personally whether this was something that was possible, because like I said, it takes at least a year, and then it's a 4-year term. But when you look around, sometimes you have to just step up.
Yeah. So here, I'm a voter, obviously, and I know you, but I am going to reserve judgment on whether to vote for you. All right, Tom? So tell me, and I say that as a person, I say that with the idea that that's probably, hopefully true for anybody, right? Reserve judgment till the end, until you've heard from both sides, so you know how they stand on the issues, so you measure their history, their character. Why should I vote for you and not for Dolan?
So you can be as thoughtful as you just laid out, and I hope that most people are. Ohio just continues to underperform against other states in almost every way. We have been under one-party rule in this state for almost 30 years. So we can continue to go that way. or we can make these little changes every now and again called elections. So part of it is throwing the bums out and giving some other people a chance, right? And you're never going to wash the slate clean. You got to take your wins where you can. So we need a much more progressive and expansive view of what we are capable of in this state. We are leaving our young people behind. So I'm very fortunate that both of my kids have chosen to launch their careers close to home in Ohio. But you can look to your right or to your left, and there'll be a neighbor on your street who's got kids who finished school and went somewhere else. They may have even gone to school out of state. We are falling behind, and we're falling behind educationally, economically, and socially. You may remember that the NCAA pulled out of North Carolina because of their ultra-conservative social positions on a number of issues. Well, Ohio can trump North Carolina when it comes to conservative policies. So if you want to continue to treat others as second-class citizens, if you want, pregnant women to no longer be equal under the law in your state, if you want your preschoolers to underperform and have less access, and if you want your education system to continually rank in the bottom third of the nation, then you can stick with the status quo. And if you think that professional politicians that hold office for decades and just move around from the House to the Senate and hold on to their seats, if you think that those people are going to listen to you and not listen to the people that they are beholden to because of hundreds of thousands of dollars in campaign contributions, well, you're not doing that work that you mentioned. You are not analyzing the situation. You need to change the people if you want to change the priorities. So if you're comfortable, not just where you're sitting, but as you look across the state, look across the county, these suburbs don't survive without a vibrant city in Cleveland. So we can keep extracting from society and from the economy. But if we can't drive more equality across the system, there's not going to be a whole lot left for our kids and grandchildren here in the state of Ohio. They'll be the ones that are moving south or southwest and not sticking around. So I put my flag in the sand here and said, I don't agree with what's going on. And my opponent is part of the leadership. My opponent is part of the establishment. My opponent is beholden to special interests. So if those are the things that trigger you, that turn you off, that make you cynical about government, well, then maybe you can go along with that. Or maybe you can change the people in order to then change the culture and change the priorities.
So you went through a couple of very specific issues. Inequality, you talked about pregnant women, you talked about underperforming schools. I like asking really uncomfortable questions, Tom, so I'm going to ask you one. If Matt Dolan were sitting right next to me, right, what's his response for why and I will ask him, by the way, and welcome him, invite him to have the opportunity to answer this question, but what's the specific practical difference on the specific issues that you mentioned, or the issues that you think are the most important to people? I mean, assuming that we've got two intelligent people running for one seat, issues and positions on those issues, what's Matt Dolan's take? How does he answer that question for why people should vote for him instead of for Tom Jackson?
Well, he will give you a much better, political answer because he's a professional politician. So he'll thread the needle. Unfortunately for Matt Dolan, he is part of the leadership in the State House that is jerking this state further and further to the right and down the conservative rabbit hole. So regardless of what Matt Dolan thinks or says, we need to look at what Matt Dolan does. So he is the chair of the Finance Committee, which in essence writes the state budget. So the state budget should be a reflection of our values as taxpayers. So if we truly want to invest in public education, then we would invest in public education. But instead, under his budgets and his predecessors, we've moved billions of dollars out of the public schools, and we've moved it to for-profit schools, private schools, religious schools, and charter schools of all stripes. So that's fine if that's what we want to do. If that's a reflection of our state's values, then we would have needed to raise the education budget by what? You'd have to increase the education budget by billions of dollars. And instead, those budgets were frozen at 2019 levels. So you've got multiple school systems siphoning off the same budgets. So I don't believe that that is a value system that is supported by the people in Cuyahoga County that make up the Senate district. So I'm not opposed to other types of schools and some school choice, but what I'm opposed to is siphoning off billions of dollars, taxpayers' dollars, from the public schools and supporting these alternative or other systems that do not have any of the same requirements that our public schools have. So they can choose their students. They don't have to take all students. They have to test. Public schools have to test and the others don't. We have performance standards. They don't. So I can go down a list, but I think it's important that we look at what people do and not what they say.
Tom, let me make a list for you to go down, okay? And let's just talk about the big issues that everyone's talking about and has been talking about all year, okay? Let's start with the pandemic, okay? What's the difference between a vote for you and a vote for Matt Dolan as it relates to how our state is handling and will handle what is probably the most impactful thing on people's lives today and which will be for a while?
So there's a lot to unpack there. But I will say that it was the party in power that ran our health director out of office. And I will say that it's the party in power that just this week drew up 10 articles of impeachment against the governor for how he handled the pandemic response. So I could probably leave it there and say, if you want to change the priorities, you need to change the people. And if Matt Dolan is one of the leaders of that party and he doesn't agree with those things, then why isn't he out front championing the response from the executive branch in helping getting this place back on track? But he's part of the problem. He's not part of the solution.
Well, how will you be part of the solution? What will you do differently? Other than with respect to the specific things that you just mentioned, which I gather, and I'm sure you'll correct me, you would not have done. Going forward, affirmatively, actively, what is Tom Jackson doing with respect to the pandemic?
So Tom Jackson is a private citizen trying to manage the pandemic like everybody else. I'm not the state senator. So it's very limited what I can do in the pandemic. Today.
Tomorrow, when you're elected, what's Tom Jackson doing?
So to be effective in a legislature, it's never about one person. It's about that person and those relationships and how they can manage to get things done. So it's a matter of, again, taking some leadership, using your position to drive the effective change. So the pandemic response was a failure from the federal government, right? State governments are required to balance their budgets. There's no deficit spending at the state level. So you are handicapped at the state level. There's only so much you can do. You can move some things around. Unfortunately, the first thing this administration did was cut $300 million from education as part of the response, which is kind of weird. So the state must balance its budget. So we go back to some of those values that are reflected in the state budget, because we did not have a very robust public health response. We did not have a very good unemployment system response, to this. And that just, again, goes back to the fact that those institutions, those aspects of our state government just haven't been taken care of. I mean, the unemployment system is run on an old mainframe computer where they don't even have programmers that can fix it. So try fixing an unemployment system during record unemployment, and that's why so many people are suffering. I think it does come down to some of these priorities that we've talked about, and that is around, so much of it is around, these equity issues, because you and I, where we're sitting, may be fine. I mean, my business has taken a little bit of a haircut. But we'll get through the year, and we'll try and rebuild next year. But a lot of people are in much more delicate and fragile situations, and we have spent last year passing a ridiculous House Bill 6, which was $1 billion bailout for some energy companies that's sitting on the backs of ratepayers for the next 7 years unless it's thrown out. So should we have been doing something different last year? Should we be doing something next year instead of always responding to those lobbyists and those people that have influenced us over time? Or should we be doing the people's work and building strong infrastructures, strong schools, and better access to healthcare and education, instead of creating loopholes for small business owners? If I give you a tax credit as a business owner, do you think that's a good thing?
If I'm a business owner, sure.
Yeah, why? Why is that good?
Because I can pay less in taxes and pay more to my employees, to their benefits. They can spend more money locally.
Okay.
So pay for their kids' college.
Great. So why don't we give a tax credit, to families? Because then they would have more money to spend, more money to pay for their college, right? So we have this dichotomy in the state where we always defer to the business owner to be the good guy and to share it and to make it happen, where we all know that it's the families that are the good guys that do things, that make things happen. So we are way, way too far skewed to provide those tax loopholes and those tax breaks to the business owners. And then we wrap it around small business because that's such a huge generator of jobs and revenues for the state. But we don't treat the families the same way. And so, their share of that healthcare cost, their share of that education cost, we've got to do more for those working families than we're doing today. So my focus next year would be more on families and issues that are important to them, because I think over the last 30 or 40 years, we've done quite a bit, and we have lowered your taxes, but we've got a lot of things we got to pay for. So we've got to figure out those priorities and You've been on the roads that have been neglected. You've heard about, the poor water quality in places. There's lots of things that we rely on our state and local governments for, that we better fund them, or that there's not going to be a whole lot left for our kids and grandchildren.
Well, so Tom, I mean, if I'm Matt Dolan and I'm listening to this, what I'm saying is, well, if you're a business owner, you're throwing a vote away if you vote for Tom Jackson. He's anti-business. So how do you respond to a position like that? Are you anti-business?
I just said I was pro-family.
Okay. I think you can be both, right? I mean, you can be.
Alex, you know me. I run a business, man. I've got 200 clients that are business people, and I work with them every day. So try and call me anti-business.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that's the issue, right? I think that's my guess is that's going to be, if it isn't already, a talking point, right? I think that part of the problem we have in politics today is that it's polarizing and it's broad brush strokes, right? It's painting people as either pro-business or anti-business, right? If you are pro-family, like you just said, I think that the talking point maybe, it probably is, well, he's anti-business. Well, I don't think it's not mutually exclusive. You can be both. You could, I've been that is, all of my clients are businesses and business owners, right? And from the last week of February until very recently, half of the calls we get in my law firm are distressed calls about PPP money and about laying employees off, bringing them back, right? I mean, economically, businesses are extremely disrupted, obviously. And so I hope that your race against Dolan does not get cast in that way. One of you is pro-business, one of you is anti-business. I think it's okay to say we're all pro-business at the same time that we can be pro-public schools and pro-family. Anyway, that's my high horse. Let me talk about another issue. So you talked about an energy bailout a few seconds ago, right? And you'd have to have been living in a cave in the last couple of weeks to not know about the big corruption scandal in Columbus. So I wonder if you have some thoughts on Larry Householder's indictment and on how that whole corruption scandal, bribery scandal impacts your Senate race, if at all.
So the bill is House Bill 6, commonly just referred to as HB 6, which bailed out some energy companies. And so my opponent met with business owners last year in June and said he couldn't support House Bill 6. A month later, he voted for it in committee in the morning, and then he voted for it on the Senate floor in the afternoon, and went right to the governor. It was signed. And he's still defending it today. So $60 million is a lot of money. But if you can extract over $1 billion out of the ratepayers being forced to pay it by the legislators, then $60 million is a good investment. Turns out it's fraud and it's illegal. And being in the state race, working as a volunteer in 2018, we knew there was a lot of money sloshing around. We could see it. We could feel it. We didn't know until it was exposed how bad it was. But you've got legislators who won their races and are sitting on their couch in their living room 2 weeks before the election seeing commercials run in their favor, and they have no idea where that commercial came from and who was sponsoring it and who made it. But it was to get that seat won. So a lot of times it doesn't even matter who the person is. They're just trying to stack the deck so that when it comes time to vote, they can twist enough arms in their parties, to get the legislation passed. So those interest groups found some powerful individuals to influence, and basically bought not just the legislature, they bought the whole damn session, because those you elect people for, on the House side 2 years, on the Senate side 4 years. So there are some systemic problems. And some of it does come from single party rule, because that absolute power absolutely corrupts. So that was easy fishing for those power companies. So to still defend it today, to come out to the business community a month before and say you can't support it, we knew it was a bad bill then. The people I was working with in 2018 voted against it. I still think it's a bad bill. For some reason, maybe it's all the tens of thousands of dollars he's gotten, from the power companies that may have influenced him. But he was meeting with us on a conference call with the local businesses, saying he couldn't support it. Felt pretty good that at least I knew our House member wasn't going to support it, and that maybe our senator wouldn't support it, but that didn't happen. The House member held, he voted against it. The senator flipped, voted for it, and he's still defending it today.
Tom, there's a glaring obviousness here. You are running against a Dolan. That is not a shy, hidden quantity here. That is a name, and that is a name that is well known, and that has a lot of funding. I know you're obviously not intimidated by it, but to me, I mean, you'd be crazy not to see that as a challenge, right? I mean, I've been, as a lawyer, we have been just really furious, most of us, over the name recognition battles that go on just to become a judge. Unqualified people become judges just because of their last name, and because that's the last name that you see on the ballot year after year. And some of those judges have gone to jail in recent years because they not only were unqualified, they were totally unethical. Now, that, whether that's a parallel or an analogy or not, and I'm certainly not disparaging. I don't know enough about Matt Dolan to speak to his character at all here, but it is something that I'm acutely aware of. You are running against a name that a lot of people know, and a person who presumably knows a lot of people. So how do you think about that?
It's not good enough. We're not making enough progress fast enough. We're going backwards. It doesn't matter who it is. Ohio's not keeping up. I mean, we're 41st in infant mortality, right? We're 34th in median income. I mean, come on. We can do better. Doesn't matter. If there could be plenty of theories about the dynasties, but we're not being served well by our public officials. We've had the largest corruption scandal in the state's history in the last couple of years under this party rule, in which my opponent is a leader in that party. So you can be You can be swayed by the name, but I think that I'll give the voters a hell of a lot more credit for understanding the issues, for seeing that we're not being well represented, we're not being well served, and that professional politicians and folks that are heavily influenced by special interests should not be serving in the state legislature. So I'll take my chances. I'll take my chances with the voters.
Let me play devil's advocate and let me play cynic, even though I try not to be. Money matters. Money in politics is a reality. Name recognition matters. You can have the best ideas on the planet, right? Ideas to date have not won the day. If they had, then a lot of the positions that you've just articulated wouldn't be there. They wouldn't be your positions, right? Ideas have not carried the day, at least until now. Money, if one were to accept the fact that at least to date, money and name recognition matters, often more than ideas. How do you, as a man with very good ideas, but who is running against an incumbent who has been in the public eye for at least 4 terms in both houses, who has that name, how do you deal with that?
Well, keep in mind that the last time he was reelected, he quit. So when things go rough, don't look for him to stand up. I only need enough money to run my campaign effectively. That's all I need.
Say what you will about social media. There's a lot of chaos and manipulation and evil in it, and the same for the internet in general. I actually think that there is an egalitarianism about it, to the extent that we now have more ways to communicate. And I'm not just talking about social media in general, I'm talking about media, right? To the extent that we have more ways to communicate and more ways to amplify your voice today than at any other time in history. That seems to me to be one potential equalizer. Right now, the counterpoint there is money buys that. Money re-amplifies your voice. And so that's the counterpoint to that. But I don't know, have you found modern technology, modern media, your ability to get your message out to be helpful, to be different running a race today than you might have any other time?
I think in the era of a pandemic, it's even more important. So you and I are sitting here talking, but we're looking at each other on a computer screen. And I've looked at more faces and squares on my screen over the last 6 months, than I ever have before. So yeah, I think the digital play is where it's at. I'm not going to give away all our campaign secrets, but there are a number of ways to reach voters, and the digital space is certainly one of them. And I think there are some, smart ways to present compelling statements or arguments. And so you do need to be where people are. So if they're at home and they're in front of their screens, then I guess that's where our message needs to be.
Yeah. Last sort of political question, and then we're going to go into the lightning round, Tom. So the other big issue, or I should say one of the other larger issues that everyone is living through, dealing with, talking about is systemic racism. I mean, I hate watching TV anymore, man. I hate turning on the news. Among the reasons, politically, and I'm a news junkie. I'm a political junkie, but every day, every week, there's another instance of police brutality, and it's such a cycle, and then it turns into protests. Protests turn violent. But it is one of the big stories that we've all been living through this year. Talk about differences between you and your opponent relative to that issue, if any.
So I think you just need to clarify, what we mean when we talk about systemic. Because we're not talking about personal racism. We're not talking about what I think about you or somebody else. When you talk about systemic, you really talk about institutional racism. My first experience, when I first got in the insurance business, I helped Progressive Insurance break into the DC metro market, okay, back in the early 90s. And there were some areas that I wasn't comfortable going into. And somebody explained to me what redlining was and why those neighborhoods, why I could go, it was okay on the west side of that main street, but not on the east side of that main street. So that was my first exposure to systemic or institutional racism and the effects of that. But we see that in our healthcare system, right? So because the color of your skin or your zip code really should not be the determining factor of your health outcomes, they are. They are. And it's just been the last couple of years, that I've had my doctor ask me what my zip code is, right? So physicians are starting to look at, where you live as a way to determine health outcomes. I've already talked about the inequality in education, right? Another institution that clearly is suffering under the strains of institutional or systemic racism. Poverty, employment options. Solon, Ohio, where I live, is the number 2 employment center in Cuyahoga County, next to the city of Cleveland. But we can't get our workers here. They can't get here. So we have transportation issues, right? We've got housing issues. We've got employment issues. So systemic racism is embodied in all of those institutions. And I will go back to what we said in the beginning. Over the last 30 years, we've had one-party rule in Ohio. So if we are still facing those issues, it means that we haven't addressed them very well over the prior, and it's not just years, right? It's decades. It's decades. So it's time for some change. What do you think? Once you frame it, host, as an opportunity to drive some change into the system. Let's chip away at the status quo if the status quo isn't working.
Yeah. Well, I'm a lawyer, so I like playing devil's advocate a lot. I think one could argue, well, Tom Jackson is really not running against Matt Dolan. He's running against a party. He's running against the party in power. He's running on the idea of change. And it really wouldn't matter what Matt Dolan believed. It wouldn't matter what he's done. What matters to Tom Jackson is that he is a member of the Republican Party. And that is the platform. That's what you're running against. And so just playing devil's advocate.
Well, we've we've already talked about how we do have to look at what he has done. And
Well,
what
specific to this issue, though.
And what he has been.
Yeah. Specific to this issue of institutional racism, of police brutality, of the summer of protest and riots, and how there will be this mark that has to be dealt with, right? Is there a specific, and again, I like asking uncomfortable questions, Tom, so you'll have to forgive me, but are we running against, is the Tom Jackson campaign running against a party, and that's the big difference here? Or is there something about these two individuals, Tom Jackson over here, Matt Dolan over here, that differentiates them with respect to the issue of institutional racism, police brutality, inequality in law enforcement and the justice system?
You have to. You said it before that you can't look at it one way or simply on one talking point. You know that you have to view it through various lenses. You have to. So I hear what you're saying. We can't just talk about it party versus party, okay? But if you don't factor in party, you're missing a big piece of the argument, all right? So when Governor DeWine was elected in 2018, he won the governorship with 50.5% of the vote. 50, okay? We have 16 congresspeople representing us in Washington. 12 of them are from one party, 75% of them, okay? The Ohio Senate has 73% from one party and 23 from the other party. And the House is about 67% from one party. And all 5 members of the executive branch are from one party. So if you don't talk at least a little bit or look at it through the lens of party, you're missing a huge chunk of the argument, because all the chairmanships of every committee, every leader comes from that party. Every piece of legislation gets assigned by the members of that party. Every decision on whether to forward a piece of legislation is done by that party. The minority has very little say. So just moving a couple of seats does make a difference, because right now we operate in a supermajority, which means they don't need anybody. They can do whatever the hell they want, and the minority voices have no say whatsoever. So we are in a kind of a dangerous place, and you have to look at it from a party perspective, okay? So I am a small business person. I am a family man. I am an activist in my community. That's who I am. I don't look at myself through the lens of a party. I look at who I am. But it is a political system that we are talking about. And the levers of power are held by those in power. So you will not change what goes through the legislature. You will not change the priorities. Now, we talked about that energy bill, House Bill 6. You know what House Bill 6, you know what the 6 means? That means it was pretty high priority to get a 6. I mean, that was in their top 6 pieces of legislation, right? That's how it works. So there are institutional problems when you have one party rule in a state legislature, because that power company or that group of power companies only needed to focus on a couple of people, because those people controlled all the power through all the levels of the government. All right? So it makes it possible to be corrupted when everything is so singular and everything is so heavily weighted one way. And you know, and I know that 75% of Ohio does not agree with the far right agenda. You know that we're a swing state. you know that we elect our governor with just over 50% of the vote. So we're way out of whack. So you cannot talk about change. You cannot talk about how is an individual going to champion something and be effective without talking about the political and the party structure that drives the agendas, that keeps those people in power, that keeps the money rolling in, that perpetuates the problems. So I'm the change agent as part of the minority party who's going to better represent the people because our values align. So if you want to give up your values to be part of the winning team, go for it. I'm not going to do that.
Tom, I want to talk about politics with you much longer, but I can't. And I've got to get to these lightning round questions, and so I'm going to get to them. So but this has been a really, really, I mean it. This has been a great conversation, and maybe you'll come back and I can fire more political questions at you. Are you ready for the lightning round, Tom Jackson?
Whatever that is.
All right, here it goes. Tom, what is the non-religious book or author whose words you apply the most in your life on a day-to-day basis? Book or author?
Boy, like a lot of people, you brought up issues we're having with race in this country, and I've cited Baldwin quite a bit today in talking about not listening to what people say, but looking at what they do. So that's some more kind of current awareness on a particular author. I do have a favorite nonfiction author. You might remember the movie The Blind Side, or Moneyball. Michael Lewis, yeah.
I love Michael Lewis.
So Michael Lewis is a long-form investigative reporter that's written a number of books. And that type of, I try not to be reactive. I try and be very thoughtful, and I try and understand things. And he is an author that I think takes issues and does that deep dive, and then is just a beautiful storyteller. So he is one of my favorite nonfiction writers that I have learned a lot from.
If you were a professional boxer, what song is playing as you enter the ring?
Oh, come on. It's the Eye of the Tiger. Come on, man.
All right.
That's an easy one.
I like it. Other than running, what is the habit or routine that you do on a regular basis that's given you the most mileage? No pun intended there.
So I ran my first marathon, I was 39 years old, so 17, 18 years ago. And one of the things I learned from that is it's not just about running, and it's not just about fitness, but you have to take care of your whole self. Trying to get in that kind of shape, trying to fuel yourself for a marathon or a 50-mile run takes a lot of self-care. And so, the way that we eat, the way that we live, the way that we vacation, is very active, and it's all very thoughtful, and it's we're always trying to improve our physical and our mental health. So it's a lifestyle of trying to have these positive mental and physical health outcomes, and just continuing to try and be better at that. About 4 or 5 years ago, as my son was moving on to college and I had to start picking up all the yard work around here, and I got sick and tired of cutting all this grass, so I turned over a good section of the backyard to a vegetable garden. And so for the last 4 years, that's been a great distraction, because you can You can kind of start that in February and March with your planning and your seedlings, and it takes you right through to October and November as you're cleaning up. So, but again, a lot of that is just around a healthy lifestyle.
Tom, what's an assumption that you had for a really long time that you later found to be total nonsense?
So there's something that I really struggle with, Alex. My father was a Korean War veteran, and he came home and he had a 27-year career in the New York Police Department. So we lived in a union household. We were friends with other police officer families. We knew that police officer lifestyle, and there were plenty of double shifts and overnight shifts, and all the things that go with being a public servant. And I was very proud of my dad, and every toy police car I ever remember as a kid said to serve and protect. So to see what's happening in police forces around the country would make my father roll over in his grave. It's not, and maybe that's a reflection of society, but he was a very, very proud man, and I was very heartened this summer when our police chief here in Solon came out and spoke about police tactics in Minnesota and said that's not good police tactics. So there are members of the police force that know that some of these behaviors are wrong, and it's a very slippery slope if we begin to challenge folks that are putting their lives on the line every day. So for me, that's something that I really struggle with, and the assumption being that all the cops are in it for the right reasons. I'm not so sure anymore. I think that there are certainly elements of police departments around the country that have some other ideas on what policing is besides just serving and protecting.
So let me flip that. What's a misconception that people have had about you?
So obviously I'm a first-time politician, so it's the first time I've been in kind of the public eye this way. So I think people are sometimes surprised that I'm a Democrat, not a Republican, because of where I live and the kind of work that I do, and kind of where we are in our life. And I think people are surprised at the level of passion and activism I feel about public service. Maybe it was a latent thing. Maybe it's something about the time in my life, but I've had to do a tremendous amount of outreach to my personal and professional network to support my candidacy. And so I've had a lot of conversations with people who were quite surprised at some of the positions that I'm taking, assuming that I might have been a little more conservative than progressive.
I think I was one of those people. I think when you told me you were running, I thought that makes I was very surprised, but I'm glad you are.
Alex.
Okay. Yeah.
We need good people in government. It doesn't have to be this way, and we don't need as many cynics out in the public viewing politicians as negatively as they are. It doesn't have to be that way. I'm not in this. I'm not in this for the money. I'm not in it for the accolades. I'm not in it to keep my family name alive. I'm in it for the right reasons, and that's what politics can be. So.
All right, Tom. This is going to be interesting because I ask this this is the final lightning round question. I ask it every time, but I've never asked it of anyone running for public office before. So I'm dying. I can't wait to hear how you answer this. What is an embarrassing thing about yourself that only a few people know? And for extra credit, for bonus points, that no one else knows.
Well, I can't tell you that one. Yeah, I can't tell you that one. Embarrassing things that just a few people know about me that you want me to broadcast on the best podcast ever.
Why? We don't call it the best podcast ever for nothing, Tom. We ask hard-hitting questions over here.
What am I embarrassed about? Is that the question? What am I embarrassed about and I'm willing to talk about? Is that the question?
I mean, it could be that has that quality to it, I suppose. An embarrassing thing about yourself that only a few people know.
Few people know. Embarrassing, huh? I've certainly moderated my drinking over the years. I was a pretty good partier in my early days. So some people are a little surprised by that. I don't know if I'm embarrassed by that though. I think that's just that was part of my maturation process. Embarrassing.
I sometimes like asking this question just to watch people think about it.
Yeah.
But you've got the added complexity of running for public office. So this is just layers of complexity here.
Yeah. Yeah. Embarrassing thing. I'm going through right. I'm going through high school. I'm going through girls. I'm going through cars. I'm going through. Did I cut corners at work somewhere? Like I'm thinking about all these. I am boring, man. I keep things kind of straight. Embarrassing, huh? Embarrassing.
What would Mrs. Jackson say if you were sitting right here? Let me help you out. What would the kids say? That one time Dad did that one thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, the one thing that we do get a good laugh out of is I did pursue my wife when she was in another relationship.
Ooh, this is juicy.
So I did pursue that, and the kids love it because not only did I pursue it, but she reciprocated. So it's kind of on me, but it's also on her, and so the kids love that's how we met. So at this point in our lives, we've shared all that with the kids, and they know the other guy's name, and they know how all that went down when it finally came to a head. But that's what the kids love. What do they like to hear about me? It's probably something around like because there were. I grew up in a pretty big house. There were 5 kids in my house, so they like hearing those things. We were the other Jackson 5. We were the less talented. I like it. 5. So they always like hearing. So whenever I get together with my siblings, I always want to hear, stories about me. Or better yet, like when they meet some of my cousins and stuff, folks that you interacted with a little bit as a kid, and there's just all these little snippets. But those are just your typical childhood things. Nothing really stands out. So I'm gonna leave you let down, my man.
No. That was good. You know what I was just thinking though, Tom? I don't think I've ever I don't know. I don't know if you usually wear glasses, but has anyone told you that you bear a striking resemblance to a younger Tommy Lee Jones?
Oh yeah.
You kind of got a thing. Like, yeah, that's fascinating.
And then what's that other guy's name who was Goose to Maverick in Top Gun?
Not Tom Skerritt. It's
yeah. So
that I know who you're talking. I don't know. Tommy Lee Jones is more.
Yeah, but Tommy Lee Jones is like ancient. I'm looking for a younger guy. Yeah.
I know, but if you want to know what you're going to look like in 20 years, just watch No Country for Old Men.
Yeah.
Hey, listen.
Oh, that's another one of my favorite authors. Yeah.
What was that? McCormick?
Yep. Coleman.
Yeah.
McCormick. Yeah. That's a man.
Cormac McCarthy.
Yeah, that's manlit for you. Yeah.
Yeah. Tom, this was a really great conversation. I learned a lot, and I really appreciate that you just gave me an hour and a half to pepper you with inane questions that I'm curious about. So thank you. Election is September, October, 2 months away, right? 2.5.
It'll be 2 months next week. Yep.
Yeah,
November,
2 months
November 3rd.
away, man. I think I told you, people have tried to persuade me to run for public office, and it is a nanosecond before I say hell no. It is commendable. And I'll say this to you and Dolan and anybody who is putting themselves out there to run for public office and to suffer the slings and arrows of publicity and attention and negativity. And it's, I guess there's an argument.
You forgot to mention, annoying podcast anchors.
Yeah, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. There's an argument as to whether this is the best way to choose your elected officials. It's probably not, but one thing you can say definitively is it all comes out, right? There's no place to hide, right? What your character is, what you have done, what you have said. The other guy is going to push it. The other guy or woman is going to get it out there. So these days especially, there's no place to hide from your past, from your words, from your deeds. So what
are you hiding?
Yeah, please. I will never, put it this way, I will never run for public office.
Sounds like you can't.
Yeah. I was the biggest push after I came back from Iraq, right? I was riding this wave of, popularity. I was at a big law firm, and I would get up and give these talks about my experience to hundreds of people, and I'd get off of the podium, and they'd be like, "Dude, you've got to run. This is the time." Hell no, man. No way. I don't want to go through the repetition and the magnifying glass. And I am very outspoken, and and very opinionated, but I don't know. You are a stronger man than I am, and for that alone, I commend you for putting yourself out there. So thanks for doing that. Thanks for talking about your experience, your background, your positions, your character here on my show, and good luck with the campaign, man. And I appreciate it. All right.
Yeah,
thanks, Tom.
Thanks for all those kind words, and thanks for having me out here. Best podcast ever. Best podcast ever.
Tom, I appreciate it, man. Have a good rest of your day. We'll see you again soon. All right.
Hey, man, check out TomJacksonForOhio.com and follow us on social media at Tom4Ohio.
Do that, folks. Thanks, Tom. Talk to you soon, buddy.
Thanks,
later.
Alex. Bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we thank you for listening. And remember to check out the Gertzberg Law Firm. Whether you are starting, running, growing, or transitioning a business, or if you need to create or update your wills, trust, or estate plan, our team will give you an incredible level of personalized attention and a passionate commitment to meet your objectives. We are veteran-owned, and our award-winning lawyers have the highest ranking from Super Lawyers and Avo. We have also recently received the coveted Weatherhead 100 Upstarts Award for a second year in a row, and we are among the first Ohio business law firms to offer our clients a non-billable alternative on every single matter we handle for them, and opt out of the billable hour. What we are most proud of, though, are the many things our clients rely on us for. We successfully defend them in court, but we also help them avoid the courtroom with our Cover My Six service. We protect their assets through good estate and succession planning, and we assist our clients in many non-legal business services like recruiting and business development. We want our clients to feel confident in their choices and to help them resolve any issues or potential problems quickly and efficiently so they can get back to what they love, running their businesses. More than just litigators, we are trusted advisors, problem solvers, and growers of businesses. Let us help you and your company. Call us or find us online to learn more. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time.